Okay, so today is Saturday, November 17th, 2018. Okay, so we'll start with the homage to the Buddha. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Okay, so good morning, everybody.
Good morning, Dante.
Okay, so we're continuing our overview of the Anguttara Nikaya, and now we're still in the Book of Threes. And we are at, last time actually I did Sutta number 53, and now we come to Sutta 54, which is very similar to 53.
It's the snow on the ceiling.
Oh, I see. I thought we were under attack from the Soviet Union.
Oh, dear.
Okay, so number 54 is very similar to 53, except that it adds one item. Okay, so in this sutta, it's another. Actually, this one is a Brahmin wanderer. Maybe that's of interest. Yeah, this one just says a certain Brahmin. And this one says a Brahmin wanderer. Yes. Okay, this says Anguttara Brahmano. Yeah, my numbering is a little bit different from that of the Burmese edition. And then this one says Brahmana Paribhajako. So this is a wanderer who is from the Brahmin caste. Okay, so he approaches the Buddha and then he asks the same question. So there's this expression, apparently this expression was used perhaps to describe the Buddha's teaching and it had spread around, or perhaps it was just an expression in common use during the period that people were discussing. And so this Brahmin wanderer comes to the Buddha and says, using the Pali, Sanditthiko Dhammo, Sanditthiko Dhammo. So Sanditthiko is based on the verb, or is based on the noun ditti, which means view, but when it becomes an adjective, it means visible. And then the prefix san gives a sense of personally or directly. So this is, sanditthiko becomes an adjective describing Dhammo. So a directly visible teaching, directly visible teaching. In what way is this teaching, the Dhamma? Then he uses, this is the standard standard verse of praise to the Dhamma that in the Buddhist monasteries are recited every day. So that Dhamma is sanditthiko, which means directly visible. Then akaliko, that's kala means time. And then akala is the negation of time, not involving time. Then iko turns that noun into an adjective describing Dhammo. So something which does not involve time, in other words, it's immediate. Ehi pasiko, ehi means come, and passa means see. And then again, iko makes it an adjective, so ehi pasiko is describing something that is almost saying, come, see. See for yourself. So we translate this, inviting one to come and see. Then the next adjective is opanayako. Opanayako Yeah. Opanayako is an adjective based on the word upanaya. Yeah, I know. So upanaya means bringing to oneself, the act of bringing to oneself, towards oneself. So opanayako is something that is to be brought to oneself. So I translate it rather freely as applicable, sort of the sense is that it's something that's applicable to oneself. And then the last expression is pachatang veditabo vinyuhi. So this word pachatang, it's technically is called an indeclinable. Okay, so this means for oneself, by oneself, within oneself. And then veditabo is to be understood, to be realized. And then vinyu is a wise person. And then vinyuhi are by wise people. So the Dhamma is described as something to be personally understood, experienced, realized by the wise. So he's asking this question. Apparently I would say that this part of the dialogue is a bit of a setup, since the Brahmin is using exactly the terms that the Buddha uses to describe the Dhamma. So unless one assumes that this Brahmin had been well acquainted with Buddha's teachings, it would be difficult to see how he would know the exact terms that the Buddha himself uses to describe the Dhamma. Okay, but anyway, this is his question. So he's asking, how is it that the Dhamma is directly visible, and so on. Okay, then the Buddha answers, again, this is in a way which makes the Dhamma directly visible. You know, he's not saying that there is this beginningless cycle of birth and death in which beings are driven by their karma from life to life, and they go from the human realm to the heavenly realm, then from the heavenly realm back to the human realm. If they do bad karma, they'll go back from the human realm down to the hell realm, then from the hell realms back to the human realm. So the Buddha doesn't answer in that way, but he answers in a way that one could sort of test for oneself and verify for oneself. And so he states exactly the same thing for the three root mental defilements: lust, hatred, and delusion. And for each one of these, so we could say this is for lust, each one of these is divided into three subsections. Okay, so the first one, he says that one excited by lust, overcome by lust, obsessed by lust, attends or intends for his own affliction, his own harm, for the affliction or harm of others, or for the affliction of both, and experiences mental suffering and dejection. Okay, but when lust is abandoned, then one doesn't intend or act for one's own affliction, for the affliction of others, for the affliction of both, and one does not experience mental suffering and dejection. Okay, so this, how would we maybe describe this aspect very concisely? Put it, sort of reduce it into one or two concise phrases. Any ideas? This is your college admission test.
Oh no. Okay. Let's see. It seems pretty concise already. I could make it more wordy if you want.
No, make it more concise.
Okay. All right. So, when one is overcome by lust.
Say again.
All right, hold on. When one is overcome by lust, he causes harm to himself and others. When one is not overcome by lust and lust is abandoned, then he causes no harm to himself and others.
Okay, that's good.
Okay.
Any other ideas? Yeah, please.
I'm wondering about the word intend.
We take the microphone. Yeah.
Thank you. I'm wondering about the word intend. He intends for his own affliction as opposed to he acts or he has a frame of mind that causes his own affliction. Is there a significance to the word intend?
I think maybe the word, it's a good question, maybe the word intend is just shifting the focus towards the psychological aspect. But we're going to see the aspect of, we call it intention as expressed through action in the next one. Okay, let's go on then to the next one, so the next aspect. Okay, so one excited by lust, overcome by lust with mind obsessed by it. Here we have the action, engages in misconduct, or this would be an unwholesome action, by body, speech, and mind. But when lust is abandoned, one doesn't engage in misconduct by body, speech, and mind. Okay, then the third aspect. Okay, so one excited by lust, overcome by lust, with a mind obsessed by it, does not understand as it really is his own good, the good of others, or the good of both. But when lust is abandoned, he understands as it really is his own good, the good of others, and the good of both. So maybe what aspect is being sort of emphasized or underscored in this statement?
Ignorance.
Right, yeah, very good. One side is ignorance, the other side is, we say, wisdom or understanding, even if it's just very elementary form of wisdom. But it's the ability to be able to distinguish what is harmful to oneself or others and what is beneficial to oneself and others. So maybe if we look at these three aspects, we could say that this statement emphasizes the aspect of the way lust, the impact that lust has on one's intentions, the way a mind obsessed by lust or greed affects one's intentions, so that the intentions become harmful. When there is lust, when the lust is abandoned, then the intentions are harmless. Okay, but intentions tend to express themselves in action, either bodily or verbal action, or in, let's say, obsessive thoughts. And so this statement emphasizes the impact of lust, and then we'll see hatred and delusion on action. So when there's lust, it manifests in unwholesome action, and when lust is abandoned, then that unwholesome action is transformed into wholesome action, or replaced by wholesome action. And then this statement emphasizes the impact of lust and then hatred and delusion upon one's faculty of understanding. When lust, hatred, delusion overcloud the mind, then there's ignorance, not seeing one's own good and the good of others. When the lust, hatred, and delusion are blown away, then one understands the true good, one's own good and the good of others. Okay, so these same statements are made with regard to lust, hatred, and delusion, and then the Buddha sort of wraps it up and says, it is in this way that the Dhamma is directly visible and so on, to be personally experienced by the wise. And then, of course, every sutta, or at least most of them, have a happy ending, and so this Brahmin wanderer expresses his appreciation of the Dhamma. And then it's a little bit odd, but I think this is because of the practice of attaching standard endings to suttas. Since he's a wanderer, one would have expected him to ask Bhante, please give me the going forth and full ordination as a monk. But instead he says, let me become a lay follower who has gone for refuge for life. But if he's wandering around as a wanderer, maybe wearing saffron robes, maybe the body covered with ashes, carrying a walking stick like the Indian ascetics, he should be asked to become a monk. Sometimes it seems that these endings are attached to the end of a sutta rather arbitrarily. Okay, now we have another sutta where here we have a Brahmin named Janusoni comes to the Buddha, and he asks the same thing, but now it's not about Dhamma, but now it's about Nibbana. So he's saying that there's this expression that sanditi, I guess it's sanditi kang Nibbanam, that Nibbana is directly visible. So how is direct Nibbana directly visible, immediate, something that one approaches and sees, something applicable to oneself, to be personally experienced by the wise? Okay, and then the Buddha answers somewhat like, in part of the answer to the Dhamma, that when one is excited by lust or overcome by hatred, overcome by delusion, okay, then one intends for one's own affliction, for the affliction of others, for the affliction of both, and experiences mental suffering and dejection. But when lust is abandoned, when hatred is abandoned, when delusion is abandoned, then one does not intend for one's own affliction, for the affliction of others, or for the affliction of both, and one does not experience mental suffering and dejection. So that is how Nibbana is directly visible. Okay, so I think this is showing how would we understand this? Is that all Nibbana is? Is that one doesn't intend for the affliction of oneself and others, and doesn't experience mental suffering and dejection? That's the whole thing? Then you could ask somebody on the street, who's leading a wholesome life, a good life, who's happy all the time. Have you attained Nibbana? Okay, maybe he doesn't know not what Nibbana is, but you ask, do you ever choose for the harm of others, for your own harm, for the harm of both? Say no. And these days, are you experiencing mental suffering and dejection? He'll say, no, I'm very happy. I go to the gym and work out. I have a nice, good job. I have a nice wife or pleasant husband. Nice girlfriend. Good salary. So are you going to say that he's attained Nibbana? He looks at these monks sitting in their rooms, cross-legged, enduring pain, meditating earnestly. What do you think?
He doesn't say that Nibbana is attainable with these conditions, but that it's visible. I wonder if there's a distinction.
Mm-hmm. Actually, I need some thought. I don't know, maybe so. What is your thought? Yeah. You didn't have your hand up?
No,
Oh, I thought you were putting your hand up.
but since you asked, but the word is, but when delusion is abandoned, so delusion is abandoned, so it is directly visible.
Oh, yeah, that is true. Yeah. Anyway, let us just see the rest of the sutta. Okay, now, the Buddha mentions these three factors. Then he goes on and he says, when one experiences the remainderless destruction of lust, the remainderless destruction of hatred, the remainderless destruction of delusion, it is in this way too that Nibbana is directly visible and so on, immediate, and so on. Okay, this is my understanding. Maybe it's wrong, but it's my understanding. Okay, in the first three sections, I think the Buddha, this is my understanding, again it might be wrong, that the Buddha is using the word Nibbana not in the sense of really the ultimate attainment or the final goal, but he's using it maybe in a sort of provisional way or an expedient way, a little bit like a skillful means, like fang bian. Sort of like, because the word Nibbana, okay, it's the going out or blowing out of suffering. And so, in this case, we could take the abandoning as not like the final eradication, but it's a temporary abandoning. And so when temporarily one has abandoned lust, hatred, and delusion, even if one is just dwelling peacefully, with a peaceful, calm state of mind, not agitated by greed, hatred, not clouded by delusion. So in those conditions, then one doesn't intend for the affliction of self, others, or both, and one doesn't experience mental suffering and dejection. So in that way, you could say, in a kind of provisional way, that Nibbana is directly visible. So this is a kind of, call it a provisional or an expedient way of interpreting Nibbana. But then in the last paragraph, then the Buddha is showing sort of the true and ultimate supreme Nibbana, that this is the remainderless, I think it's asesa or aparisesa. Yeah, anavasesa. Raga kayang, dosa kayang, moha kayang. So without any residue, without any remainder. So that would be the ultimate Nibbana, which is directly visible, immediate, inviting one to come and see. And then maybe a significant, also maybe this ties in with what Daniel said, that in these three passages, let me just check the Pali. Yeah, it might be significant that here in these three, he's just saying that Nibbana is directly visible in these three, but it's only with the last that he says directly visible and then adds all of the other descriptive terms, immediate, inviting one to come and see, and so forth. The Venerable Mangala, did you? Yeah, it means complete elimination of lust, hate, and delusion. So there's no longer even call it the subtle tendency to those states. No longer even the subtle tendency towards those states left. So it seems in the first three, when it speaks about lust, hatred, delusion being abandoned, that could just be like a temporary abandonment. So, the mind is in this calm, tranquil state, and so there's no lust, hatred, delusion. So that could be taken like, almost like a metaphorical presentation of Nibbana. But then when it comes, and that would give somebody who's coming with a degree of skepticism, it would be giving them something that they can get a grip upon in their own experience, so they could get some kind of a taste of Nibbana from their own experience, and then understand what the real ultimate Nibbana is like. But the Buddha doesn't want to leave the Brahmin just with that provisional understanding. So he goes on in the last passage and adds the expression, the remainderless destruction of lust, hate, and delusion. Okay, any questions on this? Any further comments?
Definitions of Nibbana.
Yeah.
So maybe the first three, that is the Buddha just explained Nibbana using the language that this Brahman he understands.
Yeah.
And then he direct to the.
Yeah, that's quite possible. Yeah. Yeah, you could take the microphone.
I've never seen the word Nibbana substituted for Dhamma in this kind of descriptive, the stock phrase from
Yeah.
the prayer. I'm wondering if that's common, or if that happen elsewhere that you know of.
If it occurs elsewhere, it's pretty unusual. It might occur one other place in the Anguttara Nikaya, but if it does occur elsewhere, probably not more than one or two other places. Okay, let's go on. Okay, this is interesting. A little bit strange sutta, but a little bit interesting. Okay, here a certain Brahmin comes to the Buddha and says that he's heard it from older Brahmins who are the teachers of teachers, who say, in the past this world was so thickly populated that it would seem that there was no space between people. The villages, towns, and capital cities were so close that cocks could fly between them. Why is it that at present the number of people has declined, depopulation is seen, and villages, towns, and cities and districts have been forsaken? Yeah, I'm told that the population now in India has just increased so much that it's almost as it was described by those old Brahmins. Okay, so the Buddha now answers that at present people are excited by illicit lust, overcome by unrighteous greed, afflicted by wrong dhamma. That's probably wrong views. Well, let's see what the commentary says. That lust is exclusively, lust. So illicit lust is lust that arises in relation to one's own. Oh, it is not illicit lust when it arises in relation to one's own possessions. It is illicit lust when it arises in regard to the possessions of others. Unrighteous greed is greed for the belongings of others. And wrong dhamma is indulgence in what is not a base. But I think I would interpret miccha dhamma to be a wrong view. Okay, so as a result of this illicit lust or unrighteous greed, people take up weapons and kill one another, and then many people die. So that is why the number of people has declined. So I'm thinking of even after World War II, in which millions of people were killed, but the population quickly rebounded and increased to the point where the world is, becoming dangerously overpopulated. Decreasing in some countries where there's contraception. Excuse me? Yeah. But in India, probably Africa, Southeast Asia, where people have big families, it will go on increasing. Okay, at present, people are excited by illicit lust. overcome by unrighteous greed, afflicted by wrong dhamma. When this happens, sufficient rain does not fall, and as a result, there is famine, scarcity of grain. The crops become blighted and turned to straw, and many people die. So that's another reason why the number of people declines. And I think this explanation is based upon I think there's an expression for that used by anthropologists called, is it called sympathetic magic? Is that the expression? That in some way the functioning of the objective or cosmic order reflects the moral standing of human beings. So when people observe ethical behavior, then the natural order responds favorably, and the weather is benign, and the crops, when the weather is benign, we get sufficient rainfall, the crops grow, and could somebody please pass the wireless microphone?
This might be a stretch, but I look at that and I wonder if it could have been an interpretation of the effects of deforestation and bad farming methods, which can be the result of greed and ignorance, because it is seen that there's not enough rain when suddenly the land is arid, and perhaps it's simply because the land isn't able to retain moisture because the forests are gone.
Yeah, that's a good sort of modern scientific explanation. But I think that there's some other passage that I'm thinking of that also occurs in the Anguttara Nikaya. It's in the Book of Fours, I believe. And it says that when kings are righteous, when kings are unrighteous, let me see if I could find it. Yeah, here it is. Okay, when kings are unrighteous, then their vassals become unrighteous, Brahmins and householders become unrighteous, the people of the town and countryside become unrighteous. When the people of the town and countryside are unrighteous, then the sun and the moon go off course. When the sun and moon go off course, then the constellations and the stars go off course. When the constellation and the stars go off course, then the months and fortnights go off course. The seasons and the years go off course. The winds blow off course. And then the deities become upset. And when the deities become upset, sufficient rain does not fall. And then when sufficient rain doesn't fall, then the crops ripen irregularly. And then when people eat crops that ripen irregularly, they become short-lived, ugly, weak, and sickly. On the other hand, when the kings are righteous, then everyone else becomes righteous. And the sun and moon proceed regularly, and everything else proceeds regularly. There's sufficient rainfall, the crops ripen in season, and people become long-lived, beautiful, strong, and healthy. So this is I guess, the idea that there's some kind of correspondence between the microcosm of human affairs and the macrocosm, the greater universe. That the universe as a whole corresponds to the conduct of human beings. Yeah, Will?
Bhante, I have slight doubt about the sutta because I don't think many leaders of the world are very righteous right now,
Yeah.
but there are many people who are well-fed and beautiful in this world.
Yeah. Anyway, I think some of these suttas have to be taken with what we call a grain of salt. Do you know that expression? Oh, you don't know it? It means that with a bit of a sort of a skeptical perspective. Either they're not really coming directly from the Buddha himself, or the Buddha is speaking in terms of the modes of understanding of the people of that period. Okay, anyway, so sufficient rain doesn't fall, there's famine, and many people, the crops become blighted, and many people die. And then the third one, I don't quite understand it, and even the text might be a little bit corrupt. So, okay, when people are excited by illicit lust and so forth, then the yakas are the fierce, evil spirits. It says that they release wild spirits, and many people die. So that's another reason why at present the number of people has declined. And then the Brahmin declares, "Excellent Master Gotama, excellent Master Gotama. The Dhamma has been made clear in many ways, as though a man had turned an object right side up, had brought a light into the room so that one with good eyes could see forms." And so then he goes for refuge. Okay, let's go to the next sutta. So now we're more on rational grounds again. Okay, so here we have a wanderer called Vacchagotta, and we meet Vacchagotta a number of times in the Majjhima Nikaya, and and also in the Samyutta Nikaya. He comes to the Buddha to ask questions. Again and again he comes to the Buddha to ask questions, until finally in one sutta in the Majjhima Nikaya, sutta number 73, finally after so many times approaching the Buddha to make inquiries, and always just leaving and saying, good, but not embracing the Buddha Dhamma, finally he embraces the Dhamma, becomes a monk, and achieves arhatship together with, I think, with the abhinyas, with the superpowers. Okay, so here Vacchagotta comes to the Buddha and says that he's heard a report that you're saying that alms, that's offerings, should be given only to me, not to other teachers, or they should be given only to my disciples, not to the disciples of others. Only what is given to me is fruitful, not what is given to others. Only what is given to my disciples is fruitful, not what is given to the disciples of others. So he's saying, is this true? Is this what you're really saying? Okay, then the Buddha says, that those who make such a statement, or who ascribe such a statement to me, are not saying what has been said by me, but are misrepresenting me. And then he says, one who prevents another from giving alms creates an obstacle for three people. First, he creates an obstacle to the potential donor, because he prevents the dana from gaining merit. Then he creates an obstacle to the recipient because he prevents the recipient from gaining an offering. And then by obstructing somebody from making an offering, he injures himself, because by doing that, he's creating demerit for himself or unwholesome karma for himself. And so one who prevents another from giving alms creates an obstruction to these three people. And then sort of to validate this, well, let me just continue, then I'll bring in the other source. So then the Buddha goes on, he says that, I say that even if one throws away dishwashing water, after one washes one's dishes in the water, I guess in those days it would be without soap, so it's not, it won't have chemicals that burn the stomach. So if one throws away the dishwashing water, thinking, may the living beings sustain themselves with this, even then, he says, one gains merit or wholesome karma. How much more then does one gain merit when makes an offering to human beings? Yeah, then there's an illustration of this. There's actually a sutta it's in the Majjhima Nikaya. There's a layman by the name of Upali who had been a devotee and supporter of the Jains. And the Jains were a rival ascetic group, a rival to the Buddha. They were established or founded or led by a teacher named Mahavira, who was in many ways quite similar to the Buddha. And the Jain practices were, well, in some respects similar to those of the Buddhists, but they had much more emphasis upon the extreme ascetic practices. So Upali came to the Buddha with the idea that he would convert the Buddha to Jainism. And he kept on presenting arguments to the Buddha, and the Buddha repeatedly would counter those arguments and provide counter-arguments to Upali, till finally Upali was his understanding was transformed, and he came to accept the Buddha's teaching. And he listened to the Buddha give a discourse on the Dhamma, and he became a Sotapanna, a stream enterer, right on the spot. And then he told the Buddha, now I want to make an offering to you, and I'm going to stop giving offerings to the Jains. And then the Buddha said, you should not do that. For a long time, you and your family have been strong supporters of the Jains, and so you should go on, continue to support the Jains. Okay, so the Buddha rejects the statement that he's claiming that alms offerings should be given only to him and his disciples, not to other teachers and their disciples. Okay, but what he says that what is given to one of virtuous behavior is more fruitful than what is given to an immoral person. So even if one gives food and other requisites to an immoral human being with the thought that one wants to benefit that human being, even then there's merit, but the degree of merit is relatively slight. But if one gives to a person of good behavior, then somehow the merit becomes more abundant and more fruitful. But then the Buddha goes on and he says that the most worthy recipient is one who has abandoned 5 factors and who possesses 5 factors. Okay, so what are the 5 factors that one has abandoned? These are the 5 hindrances. Okay, sensual desire, ill will, dullness and drowsiness, restlessness and remorse, and doubt. And then what are the 5 factors that one possesses? These would be the sila, the good behavior, the samadhi, the concentration, the panya, the wisdom, the vimukti, liberation, and the knowledge and vision of liberation of one who has completed the training, that is, the arahat. So those are the 5 factors that one possesses. And so the Buddha says that what is given to one who has abandoned 5 factors and possesses 5 factors is very fruitful. Okay, then there are some very beautiful verses attached to the sutta, though it seems to me that the verses originate in relation to another sutta, I believe, because they don't connect so well with this sutta, but they connect better with the sutta. I think it occurs in the Anguttara Nikaya, where the Buddha is speaking about how it doesn't matter what caste out of the 4 castes a person comes from, but one who comes from any of the 4 castes is capable of attaining arhatship and becoming perfectly liberated. Okay, so here the Buddha, he uses the analogy of cattle. So he says, there might be cattle of different kinds, different colors, black, white, red, golden colored, mixed colors, uniform colored, pigeon colored, but no matter what the color of their skin, but the one that's best from the standpoint of, I guess, from the farmer, is the bull that is tamed, the one that's strong and speedy and that can carry the heavy load. So that's the one to which they assign the burden, and they're not concerned about the color of his skin. And so, the Buddha continues, among human beings, it doesn't matter what social class or caste they come from, whether they're from the Kshatriyas, that's the administrative class, the Brahmins, the Vaishyas, those are the merchants and landowners, the Sudras, those would be the workers, the Chandalas and scavengers, those would be the people outside the caste system, the so-called outcasts. Among people of any background, any origin, it's the tame person of good manners. It's among people of any of these classes that the tame person of good manners might be born. One who's firm in the Dhamma, of virtuous conduct, truthful in speech, endowed with hiri, with moral shame. So those would be the good qualities, and then the accomplishment is one who has overcome birth and death, who's completed the spiritual life, who's dropped the burden, who's become visangyutta, detached, completed his task, free of the asavas, who has gone beyond all the things of the world, and by non-clinging has reached nibbana. Okay, an offering given to that person is truly vast. Okay, then it continues, it says, fools devoid of understanding, who are dull-witted, unlearned, do not attend on the holy ones, but give their gifts to those outside. That means outside the Buddha's teaching. I have to say, this line a little bit contradicts what was said in the prose portion of the sutta. I mean, he's not saying that you shouldn't give to those outside of my teaching, but he says that those who seek outside of here for the meritorious fields of offering, that those are fools devoid of understanding, who are dull-witted and unlearned. Okay, those, however, who attend on the holy ones, on the wise ones esteemed as sagely, and those whose faith in the fortunate one, that's the Buddha, is deeply rooted and well established, they go to the world of the devas, or are born here in the human realm in a good family, and advancing in successive steps, those wise ones attain Nibbana. What do you think of these verses in relation to the prose portion? What if I'm maybe a simple peasant in ancient India, and I see some naked ascetics walking down the road, maybe with their alms bowl, the body covered with ashes, that long matted locks rolled up into a coil on the head, fierce expressions on their faces. And then I think, oh, these must be holy ones, truly saintly people. And so with great faith and devotion, I make offerings to them, thinking that these must be liberated beings who have completed their practice. Can I make merit that will lead to the world of the devas or back into the human realm, and advancing by successive steps attain Nibbana?
Yes, if the intention is good to feed the sadhus, to worship them, to honor them, if there's no greed at all or thought for one's own gain, I think the answer to that would be yes.
Okay. Anybody else have an opinion?
You will generate some merit, but not as much as if you gave to the Buddhist monks who come for alms rounds.
Okay, suppose I am now, let me take off my clothes. Anybody have any, we get some ashes from the incense burn. Let me quickly grow my hair into long and put it into a coil. And I say, okay, so you're a Buddhist and you're explaining this from the Buddha's point of view.
Yes. I'll still give you food, but the merit won't be as great as if I gave.
Okay, let us say, but, okay, on this street we have that simple village person who sees the fierce, naked ascetics come walking by and with complete trust and devotion makes offerings to them, thinking, these must be holy ones, arahats, who have given up all bonds and gone beyond the cycle of birth and death. On the next street, there is another simple villager, and then some Buddhist monks come walking by. And this is in ancient India, so let's say Sariputta, Moggallana, and Anuruddha come walking down the street. And this simple villager looks at them and thinks, so these must be arhats. Their manner is so calm and composed. He gets some food, makes offerings to them, again, with deep faith and trust. With the merit, and both of these simple village people have the same, let's say we have a devotion meter, so we could sort of, maybe the scientists should work on developing this. Maybe at New Jersey Institute of Technology, you could get some scientists to create a device that will measure the amount of merit, measure the amount of devotion. So you attach the electrodes to the skin, and we get the devotee who makes the offering to the fierce, naked ascetics. The devotion meter goes from 0 to 100. His reading is, let's say, 88. And then we come to the devotee on the other street who makes the offering to Sariputta, Moggallana, and Anuruddha. Attach the merit meter, the devotion meter. His devotion is 88. So same degree of devotion.
Do they still generate the same amount of merit then?
That's the question.
Because the sutta says they don't. But it seems that they should.
And my understanding is dana is to be purified by the receiver and the giver.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
We need one more meter to measure the receiver.
That's right. Yeah. Okay, so that is the position from the standpoint of the Buddha standpoint, that there are two factors involved in generating the merit. So one is the intention, the mental state, or the inner virtue of the donor, the one who gives, and the other are the spiritual qualities of the recipients. So if the naked ascetics who had gone walking by, it's not a matter of the sect they belong to, but if they had destroyed lust, hatred, and delusion, and they had possessed the virtue, samadhi, wisdom, and liberation of one who is fully purified, they would be the worthy field of merit. And if the Buddhist monks were walking by and they were in their monasteries playing cards, shooting pool, but just spending the day chit-chatting and walk down the street, then they wouldn't be such worthy fields of merit. And so it's the qualities of the recipient that determine, or let's say that the qualities of the recipient that are one of the factors that determine the degree of the merit. And so it's the interplay of those two factors, the qualities of the recipient and the qualities of the donor.
But Bhante, isn't there another sutta in the Anguttara Nikaya that says something about donating to monasteries that are filled with good monks and donating to monasteries that are filled with bad monks, and the merit is the same because you're donating to the Sangha as a whole?
Oh, yeah, this is in the Majjhima Nikaya.
Oh, that's
but
in
this
the
is,
Nikaya.
it's not quite, that's not quite what is said. What is said is that the Buddha is saying there will come a time in the future when there will be monks who are, he says that they're just Gotrabu in the sense of members of the clan, and they just have, they wear the yellow cloth around their neck, but otherwise they're of bad conduct. And then the Buddha says that a gift to them, even a gift to them, as representing the Sangha is more worthy, is of greater merit than a gift given to an individual person, given to an individual monk, taken as an individual. And so the way this is understood, one makes the offering to this corrupt monk, but one is not thinking, I'm making the offering to this individual, but one is saying that this monk, I'm regarding that monk as just a representative of the Sangha, the whole Sangha. And then the way this is done in Sri Lanka, that when you make the offering, the Sangika Dana, the offering to the Sangha, you think, I'm making the offering to the whole historical Sangha throughout all historical time, from the time of the Buddha himself, including to Sariputta, Moggallana, Anuruddha, Mahakassapa, Ananda, Mahakachayana, Pindula Bharadvaja, Mahakappina, all of them down through the centuries, right down to the present. You know, so even though the monks who are sitting around who are receiving the gift are just like quite ordinary monks, but you have the mind when you're making the gift that I'm not just giving to these monks as individuals, but I'm giving to them as representing the whole Sangha from the Buddha's time right down to the present.
So then, if one gives to the ascetics, the wandering ascetics, as representative of the concept of liberation, then is that the same as giving to the monks?
Maybe, I don't know.
Okay.
I think we have to move on, try to get in another sutta. Okay, this is a sutta, okay, now, this is a fairly simple one. Okay, so this, here a Brahmin by the name of Tikana, okay, he comes to the Buddha, and then in the presence of the Buddha, he speaks praise of the Brahmins who have mastered the threefold knowledge. So he says, such are the Brahmins who are masters of the threefold knowledge. Thus are the Brahmins who are masters of the threefold knowledge. I just want to see the Pali here. Oh yeah, okay, he uses the expression te vija brahmana, te vija brahmana. So masters of the threefold knowledge is a little bit of a free rendering, but literally it would be the three knowledge Brahmins, three knowledge Brahmins. Okay, so now the Buddha asks, how do the Brahmins describe a three knowledge Brahmin? Or more freely, a Brahmin who is a master of the threefold knowledge. Okay, then this Brahmin replies that a Brahmin is well born, on both his maternal and paternal sides. That is, his genealogy goes back, can be traced back at least 7 generations to Brahmins. So they would probably have oral transmissions of what your ancestry was. So you will be on both sides of pure descent, descended from Brahmins. Okay, then one is a reciter and preserver of the hymns, that would be the Brahminic hymns, a master of the 3 Vedas, together with all of their auxiliary texts. So it is in this way that the Brahmins describe a Brahmin as one who is a 3-fold knowledge Brahmin. And what makes one a 3-fold knowledge Brahmin, actually you see the Pali word is te vija, and the 3 knowledges of the Brahmins are the knowledge of the 3 Vedas. The Vedas would be the sacred texts of Brahmanism. And according to the Orthodox Brahmin system, I think it's the longer, the Vedas are considered Shruti, which means it's sort of like divinely revealed knowledge, not knowledge just composed arbitrarily by human beings, but knowledge that had been revealed by Brahma, Mahabrahma to the rishis, these sages, at the beginning of the world cycle. And so the Brahmins preserved the Vedas extremely scrupulously. And they would train, the elder Brahmins would train the younger Brahmins, even from a very early age, from the age of probably studying at the age of maybe even 7 or 8 years of 7 or 8 to memorize the Vedas and learn them thoroughly. And then only when they reach some degree of maturity do they get explanations. Okay, so that is the Brahminic conception of one who's a master of the 3-fold knowledge. But then the Buddha says that a master of the 3-fold knowledge in the Noble One's discipline is quite different from the master of the 3-fold knowledge in the way the Brahmins describe him. So then this Brahmin, his interest is piqued, and he asks, how do you describe a master of the 3-fold knowledge in the Noble One's discipline? And then the Buddha explains by way of, well, first he explains, he introduces the 4 jhanas, and then he explains in terms of the 3 vijas, which are the 3 knowledges that the Buddha himself achieved on the night of his enlightenment. So there is we don't have to go through the full formulas. There's the recollection of one's past abodes, one's previous lives, going back 1,000 births, 100,000 births, many aeons of world dissolution, world evolution, aeons of world dissolution, and world evolution. So one recollects one's many past lives in their details. So that is the first vija, the first higher knowledge or clear knowledge that one attains. Then the second vija, the second clear knowledge, is the knowledge of how beings pass away and take rebirth in accordance with their karma. Okay, so with the divine eye, purified, which is purified, he sees beings passing away and taking rebirth, inferior and superior, fortunate, unfortunate, and so on. And he understands how beings pass, pass on in accordance with their karma, so that those who engage in misconduct reap suffering as the result, and those who engage in good conduct experience the good results. So that is the knowledge of the working of the law of karma. That's the second higher knowledge or clear knowledge. And then the third clear knowledge is the penetrative understanding of the Four Noble Truths. Suffering, its origin, cessation, and the path. And then through that understanding, the mind is liberated from the three asavas, or taints of sensual desire, craving for existence, and ignorance. And one understands that rebirth is finished, the spiritual life has been lived, there's nothing further to be done, and no coming back to any state of being. So that's the third higher knowledge that's attained. Okay, then the Buddha sort of adds several verses to this, and then he concludes and says, and it is in this way that in the Noble One's discipline, one is said to be a master of the threefold knowledge. Okay, then the Brahmin is now overjoyed, and he says, a master of the threefold knowledge in the Noble One's discipline is quite different from the master of the threefold knowledge, the way the Brahmins understand that term. Then a master of the threefold knowledge, according to the Brahmins, isn't worth a 16th part of a master of the threefold knowledge in the Noble One's discipline. And then he states a statement of applause, and then he goes for refuge to the Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha. Okay, any questions about this? Okay, Stacy. And please to take the wireless mic.
So Buddha does not qualify what Tikana is saying about the Brahman three knowledges. It's unimportant to him.
Yeah, because the Buddha didn't ascribe any importance to knowledge of the three Vedas. And the knowledge of the three Vedas, it seems in that period would have been passed on only within the Brahmin caste. And the Buddha didn't come from the Brahmin caste, he came from the Kshatriya family. So he wouldn't have had the knowledge of the three Vedas. Maybe bits and pieces, he would have maybe picked up from hearsay, but he wouldn't have gone through the traditional Brahmin course of education in the Vedas. You look puzzled. Yeah, he said that the Buddha is sarvanya, which means the Buddha is omniscient. Okay, so in that understanding, if we take that view, then of course the Buddha would have known everything within the Vedas, but that would be from, let's say, from the non-historical point of view. From a historical point of view, let us say the Buddha was not trained by a Brahmin teacher in the three Vedas. But of course, as omniscient, the Buddha knew not only the three Vedas, but he knew the 2014 edition of the Encyclopedia Britannica. Yes, somebody who's...
It does say that it's not 1/16 of, as
Yeah.
much as what the Buddha knew.
Yeah.
So he must have known something about it, or, otherwise he's just dismissing it.
Well, this is the Brahmin who's saying that.
Oh.
Yeah, it's not the Buddha who's saying that. Of course, the Buddha would have thought that the knowledge of the Vedas is probably not worth very much. I mean, he probably had some general knowledge of the contents. And, I mean, he would see that the Brahmins didn't lead, the Brahmins who were following the Vedas, basically their task was to perform the household rituals, conduct the ceremonies. They were also using the Vedas to conduct animal sacrifices, and so the Buddha would have rejected the Vedas on the basis of their use for conducting sacrifices. Though I think the sacrifices are enjoined in the later portion of the Vedas, the text called the Brahmanas. Okay, well,
Were the Vedas at the time written, or were they only oral?
no, the Vedas were transmitted orally.
Okay.
Yeah, no religious texts were written down. I don't know when the Vedas were first written down,
No,
but
well-
even the Buddha's texts were first written down in the 1st century BC.
But the Zoroastrian text was written down multiple thousands of years ago, but then it was lost, and then it was recompiled.
Yeah, this I don't know.
Oh.
Yeah, but the Vedas were not written down for many centuries. Okay, I think we'll stop for the lunch break now. So we have a question and answer period. Do you want to have? Okay, maybe we'll come back. Yes,
I want to ask about the Avicii hell.
yeah.
It says here, it seems that
Wait, take the microphone.
in the verses for the sharing of merits,
Yeah.
in the last stanza, it says, from the peak of existence down as far as Avicii hell, may all beings reborn here with form, without form, with and without perception, all be free from suffering, may
Yeah.
all attain peace, nibbana.
Yeah.
I actually wanted to ask about the Avicii hell. It seems that so many beings go to Avicii hell, even for like their sexual preference or, some of their actions. Why would they be punished for who they are?
I don't. Where did you hear that beings go to Avicii hell because of their sexual preference?
I heard that in the Pure Land monastery in Pennsylvania. They had a little cartoon that if somebody was gay, that they were going to go to Avicii hell.
This would probably be their own point of view, but there's nothing is said like that in the early Buddhist texts.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so let us do the sharing of the merits. We'll come back after the meal. Maybe we just have a short Q&A session. Okay, so we'll share the merits with the Devas, the Nagas, the dragon spirit. The Nagas are the dragon spirits, the Bhutas, the fear spirits, and so forth. Akasata chabumata deva naga mehedika punyantang anumoditva kantu sasanang. Akasata chabumata deva naga mehedika punyantang chirang rakantu desanang. Akasata chabumata deva naga mehedika punyantang anumoditva chirang rakantu mang parang etavata cha amhehi sampadang punya sampadang Sabbe deva anumodantu. Sabba sampatti siddhya. Etavata cham hehi. Sampadang punya sampadang. Sabbe bhuta anumodantu. Sabba sampatti siddhya. Etavata cham hehi. Sampadang punya sampadang. Sabbe satanumodantu. Sabba sampatti siddhya. Bhavagupadaya vichihetato. Etantare satakayupapanna. Rupya rupicha sanya sanyino. Dukha pamuchantu. Pusantu nibuting.